Okay.
Hi, I am Jessica Ardeal with the Professional Healers Institute. Thank you for tuning in to crack the code of your body's intelligence, because today's featured health expert keeps us on the cutting edge of consciousness-based healthcare. From a successful chiropractic practice in Australia to becoming well known as the International Body Talk Association founder, Dr. John Veltheim. Thank you. Welcome so much for being here.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
I'm so excited. I'm getting my words mixed up already. Dr. Veltheim, one of the things I love about the Body Talk system is the way that muscle testing is utilized. And I was hoping you could share your own personal experience with the merit of muscle testing and why biofeedback is such an important part of Body Talk.
For sure. And muscle testing is a skill. And a lot of people who are doing muscle testing don't develop the skill, so it sometimes doesn't seem to work as well. And they get a bit confused. And the confusion is, firstly, not understanding the principle. It's been utilized in cultures in areas of India and even in China and many other parts of the world in different forms. Because the fact is, certain stimuli can weaken us or weaken or strengthen. For example, they found that if they had a herb and they put it, say, on an energy center in the chest, it may make their body much weaker. So they can test their arm or test a muscle, any muscle, and it's weaker, and that means that herb is bad for them, right? The body's reacting to the fact that it's probably poisonous or something like that. Now, another herb put on there can make the body stronger, right? And you can physically tell that's stronger. So things like that have been observed in nutrition over the years, because if you eat something poisonous, if you're sensitive to your body, you'll feel it go weak, right? And nutritious food makes you feel better, unless it's drugged, like caffeine makes you feel better because it stimulates your brain. But if you trace back through history and the different cultures for different reasons have found that they can interact with the body and cause a change in what the body was feeling. So we've been working with this for a long time. Now, one of the major pioneers in our Western society was George Goodhart, who developed applied kinesiology. And George Goodhart had a lot of different techniques, and then he realized he needed to know which ones were better than others, because otherwise it was just try all the techniques and the patient gets better. But he wanted to be able to streamline it more. So he started using that principle. And he studied a lot of Chinese and Indian textbooks, got a lot of his knowledge from them. And so he devised a system whereby you could test either like an arm like this or at the side and show weakness just by using the strength of the arm. Some are more specialized, not just using their finger strength, give me a yes, give me a no type of thing. And he used it successfully and introduced it. That was the introduction to muscle testing to me, because I did okay in Australia. And so we are a lot, although in my travels, I've learned that many different cultures were using it already, including doctors. There's areas of Russia where the doctors do yes and no, even to prescribe drugs and things like that. So it's become pretty established. Now, the confusing thing was, for example, my muscle testing is the direct opposite to the AK testing.
And that's one of the things that I really liked when I learned Body Talk, is that you don't have to hold that resistance and expect the client. They can just lay there and relax and receive all of the relaxation that comes with it.
Yeah, and you don't have to keep your arm out and all that sort of thing. You can do it in many different ways. Now, the key element is that both ways will work, but I found that the way I'm using was gentler on the body. You didn't have to do as many gross things. And it just seemed to, I tested it many ways. Now, the thing is, it's my intent and focus. So if I was testing somebody and say, if they've got a liver, cirrhosis of the liver, and I'd use one method and I'd get a yes on weakness, and then another method I'd get a yes on strength, just by switching myself from being an applied kinesiologist to a body talker. So and that's what can be confusing to students. Why is it they're sort of doing it the opposite to me, and yet we're still both getting results? And the reason is you've got to set up the parameters, and the body responds accordingly, because it is not their body completely, it is you interacting with their body. And you can interact with their brain even if they're not conscious. That's why you can test someone who is unconscious or asleep or whatever. And you can test animals and plants, right? I teach plant talk, and I can ask plants what's wrong as far as circulation goes and things like that, communication, root damage, so on. So you've just got to set up your parameters. And where people sometimes get a bit lost in it is they've gone to other different seminars where practitioners have used yes and no, and they're doing it the opposite way, probably because that technique came from someone who knew kinesiology, etc.
Right.
And that's confusing. And I say, well, when you're in that class, you can do it their way. And if you're good at muscle testing, if you've practiced it and you've got confidence, it doesn't matter if you've got to switch over. It is about your focus. It's also about your confidence, right? And sometimes when you go into body talk and you haven't dealt with a lot of people, and you know, it's like learning to read the pulses and in acupuncture, because if anyone just holds the pulse like that, they don't feel very much. It takes a while. And in fact, I ran an acupuncture college in Australia, and it was a 4-year full-time course. And by the 4th year, they were able to feel many qualities of pulse. In fact, there's 28 different types of pulse, and each diagnostic, and over each position in the pulse, the 3 positions on either side. Now, that takes a lot to perfect. And when they start, there's no way they can feel that. But you see, it's education, practice, and it's training the response back to the brain, right? And the brain can then do very subtle things, right? It took me longer than 4 years to be able to feel the pulses, mainly because I was too impatient, I think. And I wasn't willing to put in enough work to do it, but I eventually had to do it when I became principal of the college. So the fact is, it can be utilized, but it needs to be understood in that way. And understood, there isn't a right or wrong way, as long as you're consistent, right? And to me, I've had a lot of students who have worries, concerns about it, because they don't feel they're getting a good enough response or whatever. And all I can say is they've got to practice, right? And they've got to practice in ways of keeping it simple, right? It takes time to train. Unless you've done a lot of, if you're an acupuncturist traditional, you've already got a very sensitive tuning to the energy systems. But the fact is, we are tuning into energy systems. We're getting information broadcasting from that person via torsion fields into our DNA that then communicates with either of the 3 brains that we're working with when we do work with body talk. So I would say in a perfect world, I would say, look, you're doing body talk, don't go and do anything with AK. None of that stuff, right? You're going to get confused, especially in the early stages, until you've developed your confidence in that. Because you get others that get all enthusiastic and they do the fundamentals, and then there's another course on this and another course on that aren't body talk, and they're AK and they're doing everything differently. Like almost the opposite. Oh my God, who's right? They're both right. But the problem is you've either got to convert it across. I went through a stage where my yeses and no doing body talk was different to my yeses and nos when I was doing straight AK work. Now they're not, right? Because I've integrated it. But for a while, that energy was there in that way. It was in my mind. If I was solving an AK problem, I needed to have yes and nos different, the opposite to body talk. And that, it doesn't take long to overcome that. And if I wanted to, I could still switch back to that. I just reprogram myself, and it's pretty easy. And but that's, I've been doing this for nearly 50 years. So I started when I was 60, I think. Yeah.
Dr. Veltheim, what I really appreciate what I'm hearing you share are the many different ways to muscle test, but it's all about the body's innate intelligence. And it makes me chuckle when I hear body talk practitioners ask questions of you, and the answer is, ask innate. Can you explain innate in relationship to body intelligence?
I would say body intelligence and innate Innate includes body intelligence. Innate is basically the reason we talk about working with innate is working with the deepest level of our consciousness and minds. And it's always been a bit of a mystery as to how you can get much more powerful with the innate. And that's changed since we've done the 3-brain course. Because you have a brain here, but your heart brain has actually more neurons than your head brain. And the gastrointestinal brain, the enteric brain, it has about 5 times more neurons than these two combined. And each of them have a particular function. But so many of us just always focus there. Up here, it looks at all the problems, and you're deciding, do I want to propose to this girl? So you sort of, up here, you can do all the logical stuff about, does the father own a pub? Is she wealthy? All the important things. And that's there. The heart is your relatedness, the relationship. In other words, how does she affect you? How do you feel around her? And it's about relation, and the heart brain even handles relatedness at work, in all different things. So it's all about relationships. But interesting, the heart brain produces 90% of the dopamine, which is the stuff that makes you feel good, that people can take drugs for. Not very little up here, 90% here. Then the trouble is, then you can say, yes, she's got good sides and not so good sides, etc. Then you've got to go to the gut brain. And the gut brain is where you make the decision. It analyzes all the information and makes a decision. And hence, people intuitively often say, I went with my gut. I had a gut feeling. And the thing is, it is because the gut brain makes the decision. Now, with a lot of people, because they don't understand that, they're trying to make the decision up here. And the brain is useless at decision making. It analyzes, but it can't decide. And if you're all up in your brain, you're trying to solve a problem like that, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And the heart, you can feel very strongly for a person. And, the heart there makes, the heart goes pitter-patter when they come near. But there may be other factors that just won't work, right? The brain helps in that understanding. And then the gut brain is what looks at the heart and looks at the brain and looks at all the things and makes a final decision as to what you should do. In other words, going with your gut. And in body talk now, we can work with those and get those 3 brains working better. Because in most people, they're scrambled and they're usually at war with one another. Because when you need a person, the old heart brain's saying, yes, 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 yes. But when you're up here and you look at the family and your bank account and things like that, big overdraft, everything, this is saying, not such a good catch, And then down here, the gut can put it all together and come up with that gut feeling. Now, even in muscle testing, you can do that too, in so much as you can ask individual brains for opinion and to dominate a particular session, especially the enteric brain. So the muscle testing can be done in so many different ways. You just got to set up a parameter. You can pull arms, you can do this where I've got 2 fingers like that, and 1 like that, and I say, give me a yes, give me a no, right? And it's best not to, you don't manipulate it, because for a start, it's really about energy interactions between live people or plants, anything living, that this is reliable. When people start working out their lottery numbers by this, it doesn't work. It's got to be 2 living things, right? So you can't ask for things about your bank account, etc. Not reliably, right? It's living exchanges, and that includes animals, plants, humans. Okay. All I've got to do is establish what am I working on. Is a hard thing like that, is it a yes or a no, right? And is that a yes or a no? And once you've established that, to me, give me a yes, give me a no. Give me a yes, give me a no. Now I'm faking that, but if I was asking a question about you or something like that, I could get a yes and no about it. And if you practice, you get reliable. We have an incredible power of intuitive thinking and working with things that is nothing short of miraculous. So it's a great tool. The key element is you do have to be conscious of what framework you're working in, right? And establish what's going to be a yes, what's going to be a no. And also, I find one of the things that I talk about in my 3 brain thing is your focus should not be up here. You know, in your own focus, you've got the patient there, they're a focus, but for your own body, for the yes and no's, it's the gut brain. It differentiates whether you do something or you don't do something. So my focus, I come in my martial arts background, was breathing down into the Dantian, the lower energy there. And that steadies the body, strengthens the body, but strengthens all the awareness of the body. It's the Dantian that you can fight somebody blindfolded type of thing. I used to do that in my martial arts. I'd have a couple of people fighting me and I'd be blindfolded, but you just focused everything to that area just around the navel. And that would tell me if I was moving in the right direction or not moving in the right direction, etc. Right? So I suggest they do that. I suggest they decide that, okay, in this case, I'm using just yes and no. If they've been doing okay and they then go to body talk, if they're very comfortable with the okay way of doing it, they can continue to use that as the yes and no. Even though it seems that if they do body talk, it may be a reversal thing. It won't. It'll conform.
Dr. Veltheim, I'm so glad you're here with us taking a stand for body intelligence. What can you share about the connection we do share with our animals' body intelligence?
Well, that all depends on you and what you recognize. You know, dogs try and get a communication system going with you, and animals in general. And you can communicate very well, and they can pick up very well. But it's a case of recognizing that the communication there can occur, and then they'll respond. For example, I've got a 2-year-old golden doodle that I've trained, but so much of his work is he sleeps beside me because he's a seizure dog, and I get minor seizures, and if I get him like here, he tells me 5 minutes before, hits me and things like that, and I know to sit down. They're only mild, and in fact they've stopped, but he used to also sleep with it, and of course if I was having a seizure in my sleep, I would sit sleeping quite happily, but he didn't think that. He'd stick his tongue in my ear and wake me up, you know, to let me know. Now, other than that, I don't have to communicate. For example, if I'm getting out of bed at 6, I could be going to get up, or I could be just going to the toilet and coming back. And he knows I don't say anything, but I get up and I'm thinking I'm going to the toilet and I'm going to go back and sleep. He just stays where he is. He knows I'm getting up, going to the toilet, and then going out in the kitchen. He's out in the kitchen waiting for me near where his food bin is. Right? So once you get to know the dogs, you know, Maverick, I can give orders without having to vocalize. I just mentally do it, and you can observe that as I get out of a chair, which direction I start to move as to where I'm going. And immediately, if I go a bit further that way, it means I'm going to get the keys of the car, so we're going to the car, so he's at the door of the garage waiting for me. And but you've got to recognize that you can do that. You do it vocally first, but after a while, if you open it up, the dog can communicate with you very well. So the cats more so, but they're a little bit standoffish and they don't necessarily deign to talk to us. I've got 5 cats, by the way, dogs, and they're very, you know, they're independent, but they can be. But you know, an animal body talk, different animals, you can communicate very well with. Such horses, for example, are a great example. They're probably the easiest to communicate with, and dogs and so on. And other animals, very independent ones like cats, even in wild cats, etc., they can be difficult. But that's just the nuances. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Veltheim, thank you for bringing us the body talk system and all of your journey that culminated to that. And as you continue to give us so many studies, visit the Body Talk System, www.bodytalksystem.com. It can be easily integrated into any practice for people, plants, pets, like you said. And before we go, Dr. Veltheim, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually, we're there's a lot more stuff coming out. Right now, my big thing that I'm working on is the Earth Talk, and that's for helping Mother Earth. You know, as we know, we're destroying everything. And I've got a team, a board that involved a couple of Nobel Prize winners are on there. You know, it's quite good, but it is a very difficult one to work out. Although now we've all come to the agreement that the planting of trees is the number one thing, because the trees eat carbon dioxide. That's what they can live off, right? And they therefore clean the air. And but we have cut so many trees, even made deserts where the forests were. This has been a major problem. And there have been cases of people doing it. One of the great gurus in India, who also has a PhD in agricultural science, as it turns out, and has advised the United Nations and Congress, etc. But he's got a very big following, and there was a desert in northern India that used to be a forest, but basically a desert because they just cut all the trees down, everything. And he arranged for 1,000 people to work and plant 10,000 trees in that desert, all different varieties, etc. And they drove trucks through to give them, you know, they put some water in the soil first, and they had to service it, you know, like once a week by using trucks spraying some water. But that was about 6 years ago, and now it's alive with trees. And when they grow tall enough, it's also been done in Germany in a couple of places. When they grow tall enough, then you see when the trees have gone, the rain doesn't come in. When the trees are up here, the trees attract the rain. So once you've got the trees, the rain, and it started raining in that place that never rained for many, many years. And it ended up with rivers, lakes, animals, everything. It's now turning into a forest. Now, that's going to make a big difference to northern India. And that's one of the major things we need to do, and that's mobilize groups of people to start where we just scrape the earth away to kill all the trees, etc. We've got to plant a lot back. There's plenty of places. That's going to be a major factor. But the one I'm still working on that really is scary, if people only realized it, is the bee population. How quickly it's been destroyed. You know, nothing works without bees. You know, agriculture and everything. And bees are in rapid decline. So in Central America, North Central America, all the crops, they need bees to pollinate the crops, right? And there aren't any locally, they're all dead. So there's an industry going now where bees are being bred down in Southern California. And then all the hives are put inside semi-trailers and driven up into a farm, open them up, the bees go out, fertilize everything, come back and go into the truck. And the idea was to turn this into an industry. The only problem they had is the next morning when they opened the doors, all the bees were dead because of the insecticides on the crops. And so it was costly because they had to have a truck full of new bees for every farm. And that's a serious thing. And the top agricultural people I talked to, you know, some professors, he said, we don't like saying it because you say something pretty extraordinary, you're a fruitcake, you can lose a lot of credibility. And yet they have all agreed that if all the bees died in North America, we would have to get out of North America within 4 years because there would be nothing to eat. Everything would die. Bees are that important. They're absolutely important. And they're all dying off because they're being poisoned by all the insecticides. Now, what's the solution? And because if you don't spray, you have other problems. But of course, they're starting to know better than that. And I've got people involved with me, a professor at Milan University in agriculture, and he uses long distance energy work where he's got crops in India, big corn crops, and a beetle would kill them. And in the aerial photo, they drew a square on it. And he focused his work, which is a body talk with a couple of variations, with a bit of what we call radionics, a bit of color therapy as well, on that square. And they went back 2 weeks later to that square. There were no bugs there, but everywhere else there were bugs. Very specific. So there are techniques that we're going to be able to help. We've got to reforest, but we've really got to help repair, and also to get the crops to grow without all the fertilizers and insecticides. And in Plant Talk, a professor who's still doing it, he's a professor from University of Houston in plant pathology. He learned body talk, and he actually did the first plant body talk symposiums, and he's done a lot of study at universities. And he'll have rows of cabbages, etc., all planted, same conditions, same everything. And he would treat one lot of rows with body talk and miss a few, and then another one. And those rows outgrew the other rows 3 times as fast and much bigger cabbages. Now, that was just using body talk. But we've also found that, you know, even using something like Reiki, quite focused on those things, will do it. And what's also more is that when the cabbages he treated were not affected by any beetles or insects that were damaging to them, where the other rows right next door were. So I personally think that this combination of body talk and radionics and a few things like that, we're going to come up with some solutions. The big problem is having enough people trained to do it. And I dare say withdrawal and body talk is first and foremost, because the more experience you've got with yes and no and everything will be great. But we're working on it, because to me, at this stage, I don't want to have to leave here in a few years' time. I mean, they're looking at the bee population being wiped out within the next 6 years. Now, that means in 6 years' time, none of our property is going to be worth anything, because we're going to all have to vacate. Where are we going to go to? Oh, I know, South America. I'm sure they'll let us through the borders.
Dr. Veltheim, this reminds me of the time I asked Dr. Amit Goswami, when will consciousness recognize itself? And then I completely fangirled out and was like, oh my God, I'm on the mic with Dr. Amit Goswami. I have no idea what he answered me. But in hearing you share that, my point is, what I'm hearing is life is starting to recognize itself. And the more that we can empower ourselves to connect with life in all forms, be it human beings, animal, plant life, and Mother Earth, that's holding all of this together for us, then the more that we can consciously connect with our bodies, ourselves, each other. And thank you for giving us all of the tools and stoking the fires to get more going.
Goswami, of course, is a great follower of Body Talk. He's lectured at our conferences, and I've also lectured with him at conferences in Brazil and that. Yeah, he's a great guy, really beautiful writer.
As are you, Dr. Veltheim. Thank you. I really appreciate you. The value you offer is infinite, and many blessings on your way. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.